How's it going, everyone? Want to talk this bit of news that is certainly getting a lot of people excited, in that PlayStation is looking to utilize their legacy IPs, and this is something that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, especially as we see Sony sinking a lot of money into the live service market, as games are getting canceled, as Concord is a flop, as Fair Game is Fair Game, and we don't know how that's going to turn out. Yes, these are other studios working on these titles, but nonetheless, millions upon millions upon millions of dollars are being sunken into a lot of games that, let's be real, people don't have a lot of interest in, and it's a market that I totally understand why Sony is trying to chase the live service bag, but there's also this legacy of incredible IPs that PlayStation has just not utilized, and Herman Hulst has noted the numerous IPs that we hold are an important asset for PlayStation as a part of our efforts to strengthen our portfolio, not only developing new franchises, we are also continually looking at opportunities to leverage our legacy IP. Now, leveraging your legacy IP can be viewed as a myriad of different ways. They are leveraging their existing IPs to an extent, a very minuscule extent, if you look at them re-releasing like Sly Cooper 2 and 3, and the first game a little while ago onto the PlayStation Store in terms of PlayStation Premium. It's offered in PS Plus Premium. Jak and Daxter is offered as a PS2 on PS4 Classic that you could regularly buy on the PlayStation Store, and on top of that, they released the PlayStation 5 version on that. You could say, hey, they dropped Resistance Retribution on PS Plus Premium as well. They're giving you Resistance, fans. What you want, right? You wanted Resistance? Here's Resistance Retribution. No slight to Resistance Retribution. That game is absolutely awesome, and you should play it. And we're offering you Resistance 2 streamable. Why are you not happy with that? We are leveraging our legacy IPs. However, when we talk about leveraging those legacy IPs and utilizing those legacy IPs, especially as iconic as they are, we of course are talking about new iterations, new entries, and we know that Sony has the resources to create these new entries. However, they are allocating these resources in different areas. Intergalactic has a gigantic budget attached to it, and maybe they deem that game to be a gigantic success. I think that game is going to be an incredible case study as far as what not to do in game promotion and what the consumer base does not want, but I'm not here to get down on that diatribe right now. We'll see in a couple years. A lot of you guys and a lot of the gaming populace thinks that game is going to be incredibly successful. I think that game is going to be an eye-opener. I do think there's an issue with conflating Witcher 4 and Intergalactic. Witcher 4 is going to be a gigantic success. I have no doubt in my mind about that. That game is going to be a megaton success. Intergalactic, I don't have a lot of faith in that game, and I think that game is going to be from the standard of Naughty Dog and the expectations out of what a Naughty Dog game should do. I think that game is going to be a big disappointment that a lot of people, I feel, aren't seeing coming. But we'll see how that one turns out. Obviously, we can look at a Concord. That game had millions of dollars attached to it. That game was a colossal flop, and they're still gonna throw a lot of money in the live service market. This is not something Sony is gonna get out of the game. Even with Concord being a disaster, even with Last of Us live service being canceled, there was Helldivers 2. Take nothing away from Helldivers 2. That game was a gigantic success, but I think Helldivers 2 was a game that the essence of what Helldivers 2 is, and Arrowhead as a studio was never altered to fit a live service model, which I do think that is what they are trying to do. They are so gung-ho in chasing after the live service market that a lot of games and development is losing its identity. That's my 2 cents on that, but I don't think Sony is going to get out of that anytime soon. There's a Horizon project in the works as well, and I think we'll need a couple of Concord-esque failures before they adjust their live service plans as far as that's concerned. However, leveraging IPs that already exist, the issue that I am thinking about when it comes to games that people want, obviously a new Jak and Daxter would be incredible. That's something that I do think a significant budget would have to be allocated towards it. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, for example, was not a cheap game. I wouldn't imagine that a Jak and Daxter game, if it was done to that level, to that standard of a Ratchet Rift Apart, I don't think it would be a cheap game to do. I also do think that the idea of absence makes the heart grow fonder. A new Jak and Daxter title now, whether it be a Jak 1 ground-up remake or a new Jak game entirely. I think because there is that level of buzz around it and people just want it so badly, and Sony hasn't shown it the love that it deserves, I think that would just make people rally around a new Jak and Daxter if it did happen. And I think a new Jak and Daxter would do incredibly well commercially. But then I look at games that I would personally really want to see, and two that I'll go to is Killzone and Resistance and SOCOM. Throw SOCOM in there. Those are three multiplayer focused titles that I often see. I just don't know if Sony is in the market these days of doing a multiplayer game that doesn't have live service baked into it. Now, could you do a Killzone game with live service gimmicks? Absolutely. Could you do a Resistance game with live service gimmicks? Absolutely. Could you do SOCOM with live service gimmicks? Yeah, you could do all of that. You could bake in live service into any game. You could bake in live service into a single player game. These are things that developers have tried to do. My worry is you try to do a Killzone live service game or with live service baked into a Killzone title. Does that make Killzone lose its identity? Does that make Resistance lose its identity? Because that's happened in the past when franchises try to go so overboard with live service, and I can totally see that happening with Killzone. And I just think if you guys think that we are living in a world where we can get a new Killzone game and it wouldn't have live service baked into it, I just don't have that level of optimism. I don't think Sony is in the market of releasing a $70 multiplayer game with a single player campaign that has no live service, and it was done in the sense of Killzone 2, where maybe you'll get a DLC map pack, but then 2 years after the release of, let's say, a Killzone 4, or if you want to call Killzone 5 since Shadowfall's a thing, you get the idea that you would do another Killzone game, much like Killzone 2 and Killzone 3. That was a 2-year turnaround. I don't think Sony's in that market anymore, especially because game development isn't 2 years. So when you look at these multiplayer-oriented franchises, I do think Sony is going to have it in their idea that we got to bake live service into a Killzone, we got to bake live service into a Resistance, and I just don't know how people would react to that. I don't think people would be all too excited about that, but you've got a bevy of IPs that Sony could utilize. It's just the term leveraging their existing IPs. There's a lot of ways you could leverage your existing IPs. Why not release the Jak and Daxter collection? You already have them on PS2, on PS4, but upgrade them a little bit more, release it as a collection, drop it on PC. That's leveraging your IP. The Resistance collection, Infamous collection, you could do all of these collections that would be leveraging your legacy IPs. It's just that would be leveraging your IPs in doing collections that I do think people would want. I think a lot of people want a Ratchet Future collection. How many times have I talked about that? But a new Jak game, a new Ratchet game, I do think will happen, but I don't think it's going to be the turnaround time that we saw in the past, where Jak was a consistent fixture within PlayStation and Ratchet was a consistent fixture within PlayStation. I think those days are long gone, especially because the development cycle is so much longer, and I don't think Sony at this moment in time views the return on those games to be as great as what they are doing now. I think Sony, you know, Spider-Man is gonna do incredibly well. Insomniac has knocked it out of the park with Spider-Man, and that's why I look at that and it's like, yo, I love Ratchet and Clank, but if you look at the numbers attached to Spider-Man and then doing a new Ratchet and Clank, you can see why Insomniac is very much knee-deep into the Marvel bag right now. Wolverine is going to do exceedingly well. Spider-Man 2 did incredible. Spider-Man 1 did incredible. Like, Insomniac at this point is one of those studios where I gotta let them cook. They've earned that trust at this point where I can let them cook. Naughty Dog does not have that trust with me, considering they have a canceled game this generation, a couple remasters, their 2020 title. The last game they put out was incredibly divisive. And Intergalactic, we gotta see more of that game, but I think the initial impression that they've made on a significant portion of the audience, which just cannot be debated at this point, just go look at the like to dislike ratio on YouTube for that game. You can think what you want, but there's a vocal minority, which I think is totally the case with Witcher 4 pushback. I think that is a total vocal minority. There really has to be people that realize the difference between what is a vocal minority and then what is actual pushback that I think is going to have legitimate consequences to how a game performs. Concord had legitimate pushback. Intergalactic has legitimate pushback. Witcher 4, it's a vocal minority. That game is going to do incredibly well. But I digress. As far as old IPs coming back, obviously, I personally would like to see all of those games come back, but leveraging old IPs can be done in a variety of different ways. I think the idea of doing a ground-up remake on Uncharted 1 would be incredibly well received. I think that's a game that could do with a ground-up remake. Jak is another IP I would love to see back. Killzone, personally, again, for me, it's Killzone and Resistance. And Infamous, throw Infamous in there. I just don't think Infamous is that ingrained in the PlayStation portfolio. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just don't think they look at Infamous. I think Sucker Punch is going to do what they are going to do with Ghost, and I don't think they're going to spin Infamous. And obviously there's stuff like Gravity Rush, but Gravity Rush is so niche that I just don't think they're going to look at that. I think they would rather allocate those resources on Gravity Rush, look at, hey, the potential return on this. They view that to not be great. Let's sink this into another live service project. I just think that's where Sony's methodology and their thinking is going to come from. And then I look at a Killzone and a Resistance. Yes, I would love to see Killzone and Resistance make a comeback, but in this day and age, you do not see multiplayer games without that live service model baked into it. And I think Sony, based on how much they're invested into live services model, if they're gonna bring a Killzone, if they're gonna bring a Resistance, I don't think they're gonna do it in the old style. I don't think it'll be a $60, $70 game with maybe a map pack release. I think it'll be a full-on live service game, which inherently, live service does not mean it's bad. I just think so much focus in chasing that bag, and I get it, gaming's a business. I get why Sony is so invested into the live service model, but chasing that bag will ultimately make Killzone and Resistance lose its identity along the way, and I just don't know if that's going to be good for anyone. I would love to see a Killzone 2 remaster, just literally release it as it was. If you get the servers working and everything like that, release it on PC, price it at, I don't know, $40, $50, and I think it would sell incredibly well, but you can't live service that, so I don't know if that's something they want to do either, and how difficult that would be, but let me know what you guys think. I would love to see some of these IPs come back. I am a little bit pessimistic when it comes to Sony these days, because how can I be optimistic? They've got some cool stuff in 2025, especially stuff that they're publishing. Lost Soul aside, Ghosts of Yotai, I think those games are really cool that we're seeing that. I think they've got some other things, you know, under their sleeves. Death Stranding 2 is going to be big as well. But first party, really, you're looking at Ghosts of Yotai, and maybe we'll see another announcement here or there. But the game development time is just so long that even if you're looking to leverage your existing IPs, if that's something that came into play in 2023, oh, we have these IPs in our back pocket. You know, this Concord game ain't doing too hot. This Fair game, I don't know if that's going to do too well. That's going to take a lot of years for it to be realized, and I think that's something that people always forget about. It's just like, man, Concord failed. Why isn't Sony course correcting already? Why aren't they already announcing everything? It's like, guys, game development isn't an overnight thing. This ain't going to happen after 1 year. These games take 4, 5, 6, 7 years to develop. By the time Intergalactic comes out, think about this. Naughty Dog put out a game in 2020. By the time Intergalactic comes out, it'll be 2026 or 2027. That is a 6 to 7 year turnaround time. That is how long game development is these days, and that's just something you're gonna have to accept. So if you're talking about developing these games using your legacy IP, unless they're smaller scale games, which I have no problem whatsoever as far as doing smaller scale games like an Astrobot, but if we're talking about games that are bigger, that's gonna take 4, 5, 6 years, and that's gonna be a long, long time for it actually to come to fruition. And you're talking about PlayStation 6 titles at that point. But that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts. I know I'm coming at this with a little bit of pessimism, but it's impossible not to be a little bit pessimistic, and especially in an era where Sony has no competition anymore, I just don't have a lot of optimism as far as what they're gonna do. I think they're gonna chase the live service back. I think they're gonna do games that are gonna be hits. I think they're gonna do some games that are misses. I think the frequency of those games is gonna be you know, one big game a year. Ghosts of Yotai will be that title in 2025, 2026. Hopefully it'll be Intergalactic, but I just don't see the steady releases of games. And if they are looking to leverage their legacy IP in the immediate future, I think the best they could do is things like remasters and collections for the time being, because creating a new Jak and Daxter from the ground up, creating a new Killzone from the ground up, that's going to take years and years and years for it to actually come to fruition. But that's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.